The Eagles have replaced Christian Parker, the defensive passing game coordinator. I noticed that. Now, what you were trying to tell me though earlier, because I was thinking Georgetown. What is your cap?
Yeah, it's Georgetown.
Okay, good. It's a different Hoyas look than I recall, and I would imagine you have a child, if I recall correctly, at Georgetown. Would probably have something to do with you wearing that ball cap. Is this a Division I athlete in your family? Which one is this?
No, Lord knows it's not, because I went to Georgetown. It's my eldest son.
Yeah.
The second one is the golfer. He plays Division I athletics. The oldest one is the he's an athlete, but he's not there for specifically for not for sports.
Yeah, I noticed what a great school, by the way, Georgetown. But the basketball program, they had made a big hire, and they hired that guy from Providence. I thought he might be pretty good. And then I saw him the other night when they lost, and they've had some tough. They brought a Baylor player in, but I looked today and he's only averaging 3 points a game. Langston Love, but the coach said something about like he did one of those. Tough loss, but there's a lot going on in our world that's more important than this. That's never a good look for a coach to go down that route and. Like Romo tried that after a loss to the Eagles years ago. The Eagles won, and Jeff, you and I were both at that game. Eagles win 44-6 in like a win or go home game. I don't even think that was a playoff game, right? That was the end of the regular season.
I remember.
And Romo tried one of those. If this is the worst thing that happens to me, it'll be a pretty good life. People don't, especially Eagles and Cowboys fans, people don't want, or even college basketball fans, they don't want perspective. We get perspective from our pastors or other loved ones. We don't want perspective from our coaches or athletes on our teams.
Yeah, no. It's pretty simple. Just take blame. Say how devastating it is. I didn't do my job, and people will be happy.
Yeah.
Happy enough.
I wanted to, I've been wanting to talk to you for a few days because Christian Parker is very interesting. This is not like Jerry. Jerry likes the former head coach. He loves a good failed head coach. To be a coordinator, this is very new for him. This is the first time since Monty Kiffin that somebody hasn't been a former NFL coach that is his defensive coordinator. He likes the familiar, and this is very unlike him, which I think has most Cowboys fans happy because it's like kind of goes against what Jerry usually likes. 34 years old. I saw you comment right after this happened, basically this was a matter of time. But this is an extremely young guy, Jeff. When he first arrived with Fangio there with the Eagles, did you immediately start hearing great things about this young coach? What's his how has he evolved there with the Eagles?
Yeah, I guess if he ends up like Monty Kiffin, it'll be a pretty good hire for Jerry. You'd heard when Vic Fangio got the defensive coordinator job that he was bringing in certain guys, and Christian Parker was one of his trusted lieutenants. When he was with the Denver Broncos, they had separated when he went down to the Dolphins. But that alone spoke volumes about how much, the Vic Fangio trusted this young guy essentially to not only be the defensive backs coach, but to be the pass game coordinator on that side of the ball. So heard great things. They don't really allow us to spend a lot of time around the assistant coaches up here in Philadelphia, but have had a few times where I have interviewed Christian or spoke to him and gotten a good sense of what he's about. And obviously talking to the players, they love him. And if you see the production of that unit the last 2 years under Fangio and Christian Parker, it says a lot about the job that he has done. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were first-team All-Pros, and have gotten better play out of some of the other guys at the other spots. And I think that, if you want someone to run that Fangio scheme and you're looking at his assistants, this is the guy to get.
Fangio famously made fun of the Cowboys when I think he was at Denver, and he'd had a successful game against the Cowboys, and I think he just talked about how vanilla their offense was or how easy it was to stop the Cowboys, and rubbed it in a little bit. What stands out about like a Fangio defense, and like if you had to kind of project what Christian is going to be like? I mean, obviously he'll kind of have his own approach.
Yeah,
he'll bring a lot of Fangio's concepts. What is it that Fangio does that you think he'll kind of lean into the most, and how could you see him maybe being a little bit different in his approach with the Cowboys?
Fangio's scheme is, it's been kind of I wouldn't say the rave of the league, but it's definitely been popular over the last decade or so. So you've seen a lot of other coordinators run a version of it, and even prior to Fangio coming here, the two coordinators under Nick Sirianni that were before Vic Fangio had ran it, Jonathan Gannon and Sean Desai, didn't quite run it as well. Jonathan Gannon did pretty well in 2022 running it. But there were differences. But essentially, Vic doesn't like to blitz much. He'll play a lot of too high shell coverage, which means that it doesn't necessarily mean he's playing a lot of cover two. It just means he's playing a lot of base too high safeties. So it'd be like quarters or cover six or something like that. Now he runs a lot of cover 1 too as well, but a lot of the pre-snap look will be two safeties to kind of, throw off quarterbacks, et cetera, to think that they can't get over the top. He wants to limit explosive plays by doing that. It's funny. He spoke about, you mentioned that he said the Cowboys offense is pretty simplistic. A lot of people describe Vic's scheme that way. And I think he would be fine with that. It's really kind of, I wouldn't say it's easy for guys to learn. What's hard is there's a lot of little intricacies in it. So it's not like they run these complex ideas in the coverages. It's that it's about like looking a certain way pre-snap and then changing post-snap. So it's a lot about disguise, really. And I think that'll be a big part of what Christian will do, because as a secondaries coach, that's something that he's teaching these guys on a daily basis. Now, in terms of what happens up front, if you have talented defensive linemen and the Eagles have long prioritized that unit, you don't have to blitz much, right? You don't have to send extra rushers before guys are getting home. The Super Bowl, Vic Fangio famously didn't blitz once, didn't blitz Patrick Mahomes once, and they just harassed him the entire game. And you can do that, one, because you have a good front four, and you can do that, two, because you have a good back seven that's doing its job in coverage. And Vic would, if he had his druthers, he'd do that all the time. And I imagine that's what Christian Parker will want to do. Now, does he have the personnel, though? It all depends upon the personnel, right? Can he run that type of scheme, or at least that call plays that type of way? So the other thing I will mention about Vic's scheme real quick is that, he limit explosive plays through the air. He's willing to give up some yards on the ground. He doesn't necessarily want to be the number 1 or top 5 ranked run defense, right? To him, he's okay. He wants to stop the run, but he'll do it. This past season, and I think the past 2 seasons, no defense has had lighter boxes against the run than the Eagles. And if you look at their numbers, they're like maybe, I think last year a little better, might have been like 6th or 7th against the run. If you look at all the analytics, whatever it is, here probably a little more like 10 or 12 this past season. And he's okay with that. But if you look at their pass defense, they've ranked, 1, 2, 3 top in the league, because again, he's going to prioritize stopping the pass versus the run, because sometimes you want to, when you're going up against a good quarterback, you're okay if they hand the ball off, right? You want to keep the ball out of top quarterbacks' hands. Not that every team has that. So that's kind of his philosophy. And I imagine Christian Parker will try and follow that.
All right. Cowboys, by the way, are willing to give up a ton of yards on the ground. All right. That's their approach. I'm excited for him. There aren't a lot of talented DBs on this team. I guess the good news is they get the 12th and 20th picks. They got a ton of money to spend in free agency. So maybe they'll, I do think he'll arrive, and they know what they need to do. Like they literally have all sorts of things they have to address on the defense. And so he may get a lot of new toys when he arrives. That poor Eberflus, that was a disaster, as you saw this season. But Eberflus was told 7 days before the season, hey, the greatest defensive player in the league, we're going to go ahead and send him out. So good luck. Enjoy yourself this season. What did you make of Clayton Adams, Cowboys? So the Cowboys get the Eagles defensive coordinator. That's obviously a big step up for him to get to be the play caller in the DC in Dallas. But the Cowboys have denied the Eagles' request to talk to Clayton Adams, who a lot of people say the Cowboys run game, and obviously he doesn't call the plays, but he's really got a lot of respect, especially from an offensive line standpoint. So I can see why the Eagles would have enjoyed talking to him. I don't guess there's any really little moves they could make, right? Give him another title to do that. Like, is this in your mind when what went into that, and like how quickly do you think they'll find somebody else? Obviously, they're kind of looking around. They just had one person pull his name out of consideration.
Well, they've had a few that have done that, or they, again, you mentioned the Cowboys denied them.
Yeah.
And I guess they probably thought maybe it wasn't done in good faith, or because what they're doing here is they really are casting a large net, and not just for replacing the offensive coordinator, but for getting ideas, and for this is an opportunity to talk to other guys from around the league, and Clayton Adams certainly applies in that realm, and certainly you don't want, if you're the Cowboys, right, you don't want to give the division rival some intel on how you guys run things, because the Eagles, the run offense, quite frankly, was not good this past year, when historically, at least over the last 5 years, and even before that, with Jeff Stoutland as the run game coordinator, has been a strength here in Philadelphia. Maybe they were bringing him in to legitimately give him a shot at the OC job. I would think that they would lean on someone who's done it before, the play calling. Considering what happened last year, or at least 2 of the last 3 years, when they promoted guys internally that had never called plays before, and they struggled in that position. So we'll see. I mean, they've had a number of guys that I think, not only that they've interviewed, but that they had high on their list. Mike McDaniel, chief among them, potentially Brian Dable, that aren't going to come here in Philadelphia. Zach Robinson's another one. He is going to Tampa. Bobby Slowick is not coming here. So, and as you mentioned, Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, very young offensive coordinator of Chicago. I bet you they would have had some interest there, even though he never called plays before. But he seems like one of the bright young minds in this league, and certainly learning that system under Ben Johnson there. They'd like to bring some of that here. I think Charlie Weiss is the other one that said thanks, but no thanks. So we'll see what's happening. I think that they probably not as attractive of a job as maybe the Eagles thought going into this process. That being said, I don't want to make too much of that, because I've been down this road many, many times when the Eagles have had long searches and everyone's flipping out in Philadelphia and saying no one wants to come here, no one wants this job, or they can't get one of their top guys, and they've done, they've ended up doing a pretty good job, and I want to see who they hire, and I want to see what kind of job he does before I pass judgment on what ultimately happens here.
Yeah. Cowboys would love to have the Eagles issues. I know what they think, Patullo, and they hated him and he was ready to go. And Cowboys are sitting there thinking, you guys are like a season removed. You're like the defending champs. And these are the problems you're having as the Cowboys are out there in the 30-year wilderness. So have a hard time kind of even understanding. Although, again, Eagles, because of their success, they expect sustained success. And when it doesn't happen, they get angry. And, of course, they didn't like that Patullo, the way that relationship looked. I guess it almost looked too friendly or brother-in-law type deal. And I think that angered people as well. Do you when Harbaugh got hired recently with the Giants, were you like me? Did you just immediately look at that team completely? It really does feel like it's the first legit hire they've made since Coughlin. They've been wandering around for, seems like going on a decade now, since they won those 2 Super Bowls under Coughlin. To me, this really gives the division a a way different feel. Do you have that same feeling, or where are you on that hire?
Well, I mean, obviously, John Harbaugh is an accomplished head coach. He's won over 200 games.
Gavin McLane.
He's won a Super Bowl. It's been a while since he won that Super Bowl, and that's the first time that they've, the last 5 coaches that they've hired. Is it 5? I don't know. It seemed like every other year they were hiring someone new. But
yeah,
I think the previous guys after Coughlin had never been head coaches before. So, right, Ben McAdoo, my good friend Pat Shermer, and then Brian Dable. I don't think I'm missing anybody.
Joe Judge and McAdoo.
Joe Judge, right. All 4 were first-time head coaches.
Yeah,
and they decided that, we'll probably just empty the Mara and who's the other? Steve Tisch.
Yeah.
The pockets and just go for broke. And it is a marquee franchise when you think about it, one of the originals, et cetera. I don't know how much that cachet matters to guys, matters to head coaches, and then coaching in New York has its advantages and its disadvantages. But in terms of like how the Eagles view it or how I view it, I mean, we've seen it many times. Guys who've been head coaches and had success in one place and then go to another place and they just don't have it. And John's 63 years old. I'm not saying the game has passed them by, but Giants still have a lot of holes to fill on that team, on that roster. They do have a promising young quarterback, but I definitely want to see more out of Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I mean, you may have heard this Cignetti fella has changed the way we view 60-year-olds. And Jeff, I'm not that close to being 60, but as we at least creep up on these things, I kind of like seeing people older than us have great success, right? So it is kind of funny to see now. Michigan goes and get them a 66-year-old, and people are out there now going, who is the next Cignetti, who was hired at Indiana when he was 63 years old? So, and you got Fangio out there as defense coordinator. I bet Fangio's 64, 65. What's he? Is he?
67. Yeah, you
7.
You said him yet to be called an ageist by mentioning John Harbaugh's.
I thought you were kind of rude.
I'm closer to 60 than you, man. No, I mean, John's a young guy. He doesn't look 63, certainly. He looks younger than me, but and I'm, whatever. It's not that young in this, in this day and age versus I guess when I was growing up, I thought 63 was ancient. But you mentioned some of the success stories that we've seen around the league with guys being up there in age. My only point in bringing that up, or at least in terms of John, is that going to another spot, and just because you had success in one place doesn't mean you're going to have it in another.
Yeah. Mike McCarthy being the same, although these guys get chance after chance, don't they?
I mean, I can't believe the McCarthy thing, but whatever.
Pittsburgh guy, though, he's from the neighborhood, so
right.
Bring him back. Is the love of Jalen? This is all. I feel like they've always had complicated relationships with their quarterbacks there. Certainly McNabb, we watched that play out, and subsequent quarterbacks. Wentz, Foles had the great run there. But with Hurts, a guy that's had unbelievable success, still this season, you got the thing going on with AJ, Patullo. Again, you go through another coordinator. You were writing about the roller coaster that is Jalen Hurts and whoever they bring in. I would think that's going to be a huge part of this hire. Who do we think can get along with him? Do you sense that Hurts is a kind of a difficult personality? Y'all talk to him all the time. I don't know how he is exactly with the media. Is he just is he a prickly dude? I just don't understand where is that fan base with him right now, because he's done great things, but then he'll go through times where everybody is this guy that good?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't base anything I reported about Jalen off of what our relationship is or how he deals with the media. I just go on what I hear or what I know from people in the building, players, coaches, executives, et cetera, on down. And I mean, I think he first, stoic is probably the best way to describe him. He is a little bit of I wouldn't say a loner, but he certainly keeps to himself. he's like the oldest 27-year-old you'll ever meet, and I think he prides himself on being kind of above people in terms of how he carries himself. There's a lot to like about Jalen, certainly, in terms of his work ethic, and I think he does just want to win. I think he's sometimes, I think he is willing to do. I wouldn't say whatever it takes, but I think that sometimes coaches that have worked with him have struggled with the communication part of it, and whether he's a quote unquote listening. I don't want to take anything away from Jalen in terms of what he's done, and we all know his story, from Alabama, from high school. I do, Alabama, Oklahoma, et cetera, and drafted in the second round, and coming in here under the shadow of Carson Wentz, and how he ended up becoming the starter. He's done a lot in the league. He's won a lot in the league. But that being said, he is not perfect. And if we're just talking about football, I would say there was some aggression, and there's some question about whether he was doing the things necessary to make him the quarterback that he has been, and that is running the ball. From what I understand, he didn't want to do as much of it this year, and I think the Eagles were on board to some extent with that because they didn't want to see him get hurt, but also they wanted a little more of that at various times, especially as the season went on, and you just didn't see it as much. And I think Jalen probably doesn't. I don't know if he doesn't understand or doesn't, that is kind of what makes him a great quarterback. And when you take that away, he's just kind of a good / okay quarterback. If he's going to be dropping over 30, possibly 40 times a game, that's when you start to see the limitations of what he can do as a drop back passer. Now it's on the coaches and it's on the scheme, it's on the play calling to bring the best out of him. We've seen him do it at a high level in 2022. He was the runner-up for the MVP. And last year, certainly, they won the Super Bowl. He was the MVP in the Super Bowl, although I didn't vote for him. I voted for Josh Sweat. I like to point that out to people because, as I mentioned before, with Vic Fangio, it was like that defense that won that game. And I think there's a lot of people in the building that maybe view Jalen through that lens, and that, he's a big part of their success. He plays the most important position on the roster. But there are also a lot of really good players around him. There's also really good coaching staff. And I assume that there was maybe this is just on them, maybe more on Jalen, but he carries himself a certain way, like as if like he kind of was primarily responsible for that. And I wrote about in that story that you mentioned about his relationship with Michael Jordan and the brand, and how he kind of views himself through that lens. And I think players would tease him about it and call him Little Jordan. But I think there's a little more to the teasing, as you probably know. You're a little bit of a teaser there, Mark. And there's probably a little truth when you make fun of people about how maybe you feel about them. And I think that that is probably true when it comes to the players. They would tease to his face. They would call him Little Jordan. It's kind of a, and I think he rolled with it pretty well. But my guess is they're probably thinking, hey, it wasn't all you, and you played with one of the best rosters assembled in the last, 10, 15 years.
All right. I'm going to let you, I heard Gavin trying to call you earlier. You need to, get back.
Well, at least my audio is working.
No, I wish we should have just gotten Gavin on and kind of just see how things are going. I might have, he might have wanted to have a comment or two about Jalen. Last thing I had, between Romo and Dak, do Eagles fans, was it easier for them to hate Romo just because Romo is a little bit more of a, I don't know if you'd call it the pretty boy, however you would want to put it. Because I almost sense there might be more of a respect level for Dak. Now, I could be misinterpreting that. Or do Eagles fans just automatically hate all Cowboys quarterbacks?
Yeah, I hate to speak for him because I am not an Eagles fan.
I know.
I do have them in the house, though.
They live with you.
Yeah, these weird people live with me. Romo, I think, well, it's tough to look at him now and not look at him through the broadcast analyst kind of part of it too. And I think people typically get annoyed by that in Philadelphia because they think everyone's against them whenever they broadcast their games. But yeah, I'd say yeah, I think there is some respect for Dak. Dak carries himself like Dak is a dude. Like if you got to see it on the Hard Knocks, I was forced to watch it unfortunately because they had the NFC East the end of the season. I don't know how much you watched it, Mark, but sorry, Matt. It was kind of telling about how much he's like loved in that locker room and the way he kind of just rolls with the punches, right? And so I think, and then plus I think I don't know. Would you say I don't know if you agree with this? I think that he's probably maybe a better quarterback than Tony Romo.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't play with the flair. I think some people like the Favre nature that Tony brought. Dak, to your point, Dak carries himself, it sounds a little bit more like Jalen. Now, he doesn't really have like, I'm above everybody. I mean, his teammates do. All of those people love him and everything, but he has a more CEO professional where Tony was kind of like, Tony was dating all the celebrities before he settled down and got married and had that thing going. So if you kind of like the celebrity quarterback, which Parcells never wanted, which is funny that Tony came up under Parcells because Tony was a total celebrity quarterback. Dak is not a celebrity quarterback and is more of a buckled down guy. So I don't know who I would say is better. I just think one, they're both don't have great playoff records, and there's not much separation either way, although Dak's going to end up playing long enough to break all of Romo's records. And sadly, neither one of them can sniff Danny White, who, by the way, never won a Super Bowl.
Either. Yeah. Well, yeah. They obviously hate all Cowboys players, but I find that those two probably wouldn't get near the top of the list.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. There might be. I used to love, that's why I liked kind of hanging out and getting to know some of those like Tuck and Selleck, because I think one thing I liked about both of them, and Brent Selleck was the old Eagles tight end for people listening to us. I like that they got the rivalry and they love to stick it to they got into it. And, sometimes players they're 21, 22 years old. They don't understand it. They don't know that it takes them a while to get up to speed on that. And I always felt like those guys loved kind of feeding into the hatred, and that kind of played along to the rivalry. And like Tuck hated Flozell Adams, and Selleck liked to kind of stick it to the Cowboys. So I always appreciated that. Man, Jeff, that was good. We do have to spend more time together, and I'm going to find a way to make that happen since you accidentally called me Mark.
Oh boy, yeah, colossal error that.
We've only been like good buddies for about 15 years now, but we'll work on it. We're gonna.
Yeah. Look at my son. Gavin's texting me, and I.
No, I'm just.
Are you going to the Super Bowl?
Have not decided yet. Probably not. You will be there as usual.
I will be there per usual. We could have. I think we did last time it was in San Francisco. We did get a bite to eat.
We had several stars with us at the table, but I think you and I were the main. We were certainly the main draw at the table. We weren't the highest paid guys at the table, but I think they were there because of us. Jeff, thank you for doing this today. We're continuing to try to survive down here with all the weather. But nobody's left their house in about 3 days. So
what? We're getting killed up here. I've been shoveling all day.
But we don't know what that even means. Like
right. On the Super Bowl there. What a nightmare.
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. We were struggling. We didn't know what salt was. We didn't know how to
on the sidewalks.
We didn't know how to behave. We put all y'all at like the Sheraton Hotel. It was a struggle. It was a struggle. But hey, I appreciate it, and thanks for doing this. Really great information. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, there he goes.